We're on. So where we left off on telling the story was when Eagle actually becomes the head of the World House, and as I was saying, to get a full picture of what's happening here, because later on we start hearing other characters being introduced when they actually need to be introduced here, because they were a part of the picture. They were a part of what happened and why the world became dark in the first place. And this is something that happened after Eagle became the head of the World House, and because of the choices that he made, and it was because of the jealousy that he had of his wife. He didn't want anybody talking to her, and because of that, he started to imprison his mother, his father. He imprisoned his uncle, who was the head of the World House before he was. But there was Hawk and Petrol. The presence of Hawk and Petrol makes us realize that these are all the people that are within this World House, and who Eagle now, because he succeeded his uncle and became the head of the World House, he has some kind of an authority because of the head of the World House, of all of those people that occupy that house. And those people that are occupying the house are not just Hawk and Petrol, but they are the other parents who were the parents to Hawk and Petrol. Those parents come from the same place where the parents of Eagle come from. And in the story, you heard me introduce Eagle's father was the sun, and I just call him Kakan Ish. His mother was the moon, and I just call her Disitla. So now we have to remember that the other parts of the family included who the parents of Hawk and Petrol are. And the parents of Hawk and Petrol, I'm not sure which ones of the other planets in our solar system are Hawks and Petrol's parents. But Hawk and Petrol in particular referred to Eagle and Raven as Connies, as their brothers-in-law. And so that's suggesting that Eagle or Hawks and Petrol's parents are related to the parents of the sun and the moon, or related to the parents of Eagle and Hawk, because they're in-laws to them. And so we're getting a bigger or a clearer picture that here's the sun, and the way I hear the story is that how the sun and the moon met in the first place was that here were these planets traveling through the universe until these group of planets met this other group of planets, and in one group the sun, Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn are with the sun, and the moon, you have the Earth, Venus, Mars are a part that's traveling with that group. And now they're traveling and almost going towards each other, and they get close enough to each other where the sun and the moon see one another, and their attraction grows until they evolve into this family of planets that now you have the father side and the mother side. The father side again, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, the sun, the moon, Earth, Mercury, Venus, and so on. And so now here's this planetary family, and when the sun and the moon began to share their children with the Earth, the other planets said, hey, we want to get in on this act. We want to be a part of this too. And so the other planets began to couple off, pair up, and they become parents, and they share their children with the earth as well. And that's where Hawk and Petrel come from. And other characters of the stories come in here as well, and are introduced and are coming from the same place that these other these characters that we're focusing on, who are the eagle, hawk, petrel, raven, the sun and the moon and the earth in particular. And there's eight characters that are the first part of this whole story. So now you're getting a clearer picture, because now they're not just planets out here in the solar system, they become the characters that are occupying the world house. So in the world house, the sun is somebody again we call Gagan Ish. In the world house, we have Disitla, who is the moon, and the parents to Eagle. And now here's Hawk and here's Petrel, and they become a part of that story. And because Eagle succeeded his uncle, he became the head of the world house and has that, if you will, that kind of an authority over the others that are inhabiting this house during that same time. And these also involve the parents to Hawk and Petrel. They're all a part of the world house. And and is the house that Eagle became the head of. And there's an introduction about what that family looks like that's occupying the world house. And I'm imagining that the hawk and petrel and raven, they're all introduced into the story because the parents are beginning to see what starts to unfold in the story, because Eagle becomes the head of that world house. And because after he got married, he became so jealous that he, like I said, he imprisons his mom and his dad, his uncles and his other relatives, because he didn't want anybody talking to his wife. He even suspended his wife in a cage. He put her in her cage and suspended her from the rafters of the house. And in that cage, just like a bird cage. And so that's where we pick up the story. Typically, most of us that are familiar with these stories, this is where another one of those stories begin. And this is where the raven is introduced, because then he is born of stone. And because he's born of stone, his mother called him Ichak, or stone boy. But I'm getting ahead of the story here, because how that story, part of the story actually begins, is that here's Disitla before the birth of Raven. Disitla is stumbling around on the beach, and she's grieving so hard because of the horrible things that Hawk has caused, all of the chaos in the family, and hurting a lot of the family and like that. And so now Disitla is down on the beach and just stumbling and falling all over the place because she's grieving the loss of family members and like that, because of what Eagle is doing. And now because those problems are happening in the world house, the sun and the moon see this. And so then they endow Raven with very, very special skills and abilities so that he can come to be born on the earth and try to straighten out some of the problems that are going on the earth. And one of the reasons, again, of course, why and Raven actually contributes to the way he was born. And because as he was being lowered from the sun to be born here on earth, Raven, the way that whole part of the story is described is that as he is being lowered to the earth, it's like he is floating through the air, and he can see everything down below him as he's coming closer and closer to the earth. And the more he's lowered, the more specific his direction in the world house becomes, because now finds himself actually flying, and he recognizes where he's at because he recognizes the countryside, and he said, "Oh, I'm being lowered down to my uncle's house, to the world house." And as on his way to the world house, his following the shorelines as well as his being lowered to the world house, his following the shoreline. And as he's floating along, he looks down and he sees this woman, and he realizes she's in a very hard way. She's obviously grieving horribly. And Raven sees this, and he becomes concerned. And so he lands on the top of a spruce tree that's not too far from where he saw this woman stumbling around on the shore. And the tide was way down, and there were all kinds of tidal pools on that shoreline. And where Raven landed and where he saw Dissiclaw, didn't know who she was yet at that point, but he saw her stumbling around on the shoreline. And after he landed on the treetop nearby, he started hollering down to her, "Hey, sister, what's wrong? Why are you grieving so hard? What happened?" And all the woman heard when he heard the question that Raven was asking of her, all the woman heard was, "Oh, oh, 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 oh." That's all the woman heard. And so to her, it was just an irritant. It wasn't even helping her in her grief at all, and she just continued on her way. And Raven, thinking, well, what the heck? He was speaking clearly and plainly, but obviously she's either ignoring him or didn't hear him. So he hollered out louder, and again, of course, that's all the woman heard were the cries of the raven. And so the raven is sitting up in the tree wondering what to do, and then he looks down the shoreline wondering, what could he do to how could he communicate with this woman. And when he looked down the shoreline a little further ahead of him, he saw a heron fishing in one of the tidal pools. And so he hollered down to Heron and asked him, does he see the woman stumbling around down there? And Heron looks around and he looks and he says, oh yeah, I see her. He said, something's wrong with her. Would you ask her? Because she doesn't seem to be hearing me or understanding me. Could you ask her, what the problem is, and maybe we might be able to help? And Heron says, okay, she's heading in my direction. I'll ask her when she gets here. And it didn't take too long before the woman was close enough to Heron where Heron talks to the woman and asks her, what's this, sister, what's wrong? And the woman looks up at the heron and realizes that she's speaking to a bird, and so she must be really, or this heron speaking to her, and she's understanding him, and so she's wondering about her sanity at this point, I'm sure, or something like that, and but in her grief, she just felt like, well, maybe what I need to do is share my grief with this heron. Maybe it'll help. She felt like she needed to talk to somebody, and so she started to share with the heron why he finds her stumbling and grieving on the shoreline, and she was all wet and muddy from falling around on the wet shoreline. And now Heron, not only Heron is hearing what the woman was sharing with her, but Raven is up on the top of the tree, and he's hearing too, and he's thinking, oh, that's when he realizes, this is my mother, who I haven't even been born to yet. And so then he starts to share with Heron a plan, because Raven was still aware of the darkness that he was being lowered into, and he was remembering why he was being lowered in there. His father and his mother endowed him with things that were going to hopefully help turn things around of the things that his brother Eagle was causing, all the problems Eagle was causing. The sun and the moon saw all of that, and so they endowed Raven with special skills and abilities to help fix it, to restore it. And so now Raven is realizing and remembering all of that, and realizing, oh, this is my mother, who I've not been born to yet. So he starts to speak through the heron, and he's telling the heron, what his plan is, and he says to relay it to Discipla, and at first Raven tells Heron, it's good for you to grieve. Don't let me interfere that. You need to cry yourself out. So don't let me discourage that. I said, but as you're going along, at some point you're going to find yourself where you're right next to the water on the shoreline. You're right, and the tide is really low right now. And when you get to the shoreline, Heron is relaying this to Discipla. When you get to where the water meets the shoreline, he said, let that interrupt your grieving just for a moment, and look around on the ground, and perhaps you'll find a little black stone. And when you see that little black little pebble, pick it up and rinse it off, and put it away someplace where you can get to it later, and then if you need to, continue grieving. And so the woman heard all these instructions of what Heron was relaying to her from Raven, and thought it all really odd, but she continued on her way until she found herself right where Heron said she would find herself where the water came up to the shoreline. She found herself laying in the wet land right there where that was, and she started to look around because she remembered Heron told her to look around, and perhaps she'll find a little black stone, a little black pebble. And so she started looking around on the shoreline, and sure enough, here was a little black pebble that was right there. And so she picked it up and looked at it and found it really interesting that this bird would tell her this, and now she finds it. And so she just kind of dismissed it and did like he instructed, and she found a place to put it where it would be safe. And she continued on her way. And finally, she cried herself out. And so she started to head back in the direction of home, but then started thinking about all the darkness that was going on inside of the world house because of what Eagle was doing. And she really didn't want to go back in that environment where all those horrible things were happening. And so rather than go back, she found a place where there was all kinds of driftwood. And so she made herself a fire. She made herself a fire. Would you call Marlene and say what we're doing?
I did.
She's calling me.
Yeah.
And so.
I don't know how to open her phone.
So, where was I?
Starting a fire.
Oh, yeah. So, Dizzyclaw, she starts walking along the shoreline, but it came to a point where she started thinking about all of the things going on in the world house, and she didn't want to go back into that environment. So she stopped and built herself a fire, and she's sitting there by the fire, and she started thinking about what Heron told her, that after she'll come to a place where she'll build a fire, and then that'll remind her that she has this pebble stored away someplace. And so she started looking around and putting where she put it, and she brought out the stone, and she started to remember what Heron told her. He told her that she needed to put that stone, that little black stone, into the fire and watch it, because it's going to change color. The hotter it gets, the colors are going to change. And so the colors changed. The stone was black, but then it turned red. Then it turned turquoise. Then it turned white. And then it went back to black. And that's when Heron told her, now pick it up. Don't worry. The flames aren't going to burn you. Don't worry. The stone's not going to burn you. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to burn you. Just trust me. Trust me, Heron. Trust that it's gonna be okay. And so she was thinking about that after she put the pebble in the fire, and she watched it, and she saw it change the colors just as Heron said it would. It changed to all these different colors. And then it returned back to the black, and then she came to that place where Heron said, now pick it up out of the flames. And of course she's thinking, are you crazy? she's feeling that now, but then she's remembering Heron telling her not to worry about it. It's not going to burn you. You'll be okay. And so she had to trust and have faith that what Heron was telling her was true. So tentatively at first she starts to reach towards the pebble, and eventually she reaches in there and grabs the pebble, and sure enough, nothing happened. She didn't get burned. It wasn't burning her fingers. But then the next thing that Heron told her to do was that after she picked it up, she needed to put it in her mouth and swallow it. And then Heron told her, your grief will be gone, and you'll be okay again. And so she did all of this that Heron instructed her to do, and now she's sitting there with the pebble in her hand, and she sticks the pebble in her mouth, and she swallows it, and it's when she conceived. And after that happened, her grief left her, and now she has a child in her womb. So now even she wanted even less to go back to the world house, because now she has a son. Dewe.
Wow.